Thanks for tuning in to Half Glass Broken. Glass Half Broken?
It's Glass Half Broken.
Glass Half Broken.
I allowed you to do the intro under the guise that you knew what the fucking name of the podcast was.
I'm usually not awake for that.
Okay, alright, gotcha.
This is kind of late for us recording. Glass Half Broken, a modern media podcast for the realist.
There you got that part right.
So we can fix that in post, you know.
We're not going to fix that at all.
Yeah.
No. Alright.
Anyway, how the fuck are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm Colin, that's Tom, by the way.
Hi.
Again. I don't know. By this point, you probably have our names memorized and everything. Right now...
All one person.
That's right.
Who's probably listening to this.
That's right. Every once in a while, we've had a like on our stuff on SoundCloud. like
a single solitary like.
Yeah.
The loneliest like ever.
But like a different person every time, I believe.
Oh. So what we're doing is burning our bridges one at a time.
That's
just
right.
Very slowly.
Yeah. They listen to it, they like it, and then they forget.
Yeah.
So as mentioned last week, Erin is out on vacation. So it is just actually Tom and I this time.
She's out risking life and limb on a carnival cruise.
Carnival cruise. So I also just checking the what do you call that?
Our levels.
The levels there, so like that. So it's looking a little lower, mainly just because like I'm so used to shouting and just seeing it just flare up.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a different audio environment here.
Because we usually do it at Erin's place. Now we're
at my PC, and apparently half my USB ports don't work. That was a great thing to find out the hard way today.
Yeah, so it was basically just like fucking around with Tom's rig. And like going just like, man,
I just need a new fucking computer. That's all.
Yeah, and so that's why we're starting like way later in the day, and but it's fine because today is both of our days off. So
yeah, consequently, I'm the awake one and you're the asleep one here right now.
Kind of.
But regardless,
modern media. We have a few things that we have to talk about. We have some things we've both seen a very interesting documentary.
Do we want to start out with the nightmare?
Do we want to start out with the nightmare? Why don't we save that a little later? But
right.
Yes, so we saw a very interesting documentary about about sleep paralysis called The Nightmare. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. First, what would you like to start off with?
All right. You know what? New fucking deaf heaven. Jesus Christ, I can't talk. Deaf heaven.
Yeah, deaf as in can't hear, and heaven as in the place of
death. Yes, it's all one word, as if heaven itself were deaf.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, New Bermuda, new album from them. It's a little bit of a shift back to norm after Sunbather, which was on its own. It was a fucking astounding album. I mean, that was the highest rated album on Metacritic, and I think rightly so. I think it's kind of ironic that you have a black metal band with a guitarist who pretty much worships Kevin Shields, and
from My
Bloody Valentine, yeah, and My Bloody Valentine releases their big comeback album the same year as them, and they actually beat them out critically.
Oh wow!
At least in regards to Metacritic, I mean.
Which, that doesn't really matter that much. But...
I mean, it's kind of a neat thing to have, but, with how they just kind of arbitrarily assign numerical values to fucking just written reviews and stuff like that.
Because there are definitely reviewers that don't give scores that are on Metacritic, and they'll
just arbitrarily give a score, and it's just, it could be like a middling review that they just give like an 80 or something like that.
Yeah, I've never liked that about it, but anyway...
I don't know. Sunbather was a very. They wore their My Bloody Valentine influence on their sleeves on that record.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of droney, spacey, just very Kevin Shieldsy bits with shitloads of reverse reverb. At least I think that's what they kind of lean on on some of their more atmospheric bits. But New Bermuda. They're kind of alternating between more thrashier sections and cleaner like post rock sections that build up to it like a crescendo. I don't know, Colin. I think I think you might like it. I think I've had you listen to them before, but you kind of have a little bit of an aversion to blast beats.
I mean, like, it's weird. Like, I love My Bloody Valentine. They're one of my favorite bands. But, like, and it's kind of weird how there's so many metal acts, and there's so many people, like, there's so many, like, harder acts that are inspired by My Bloody Valentine, and just, like, I've never been a fan of, like, I mean, I one time I did like metal. I just kind of really got out of it, and then, like, even just, like, just harder like edge, like stuff that has like too much of an edge to it. Like, I'm just sort of like, like, I don't know. I think it might have something to do with the fact that just, like, it's this bizarre idea of, like, that attitude in your head of just sort of like, you know, imagining some, like, 10th grade kid with a metal t-shirt listening to it, kind of going like, yeah, this is the hard rock shit. I don't listen to that pop bullshit. And then, like, I don't know, and, like, I mean, yeah, like, it's.
See, what's kind of funny is that you kind of have that kind of heavy metal fan stereotype who's kind of part of the backlash against bands like Death Heaven,
yeah,
and Myrkur and Alcest and bands like that. And
you can talk a little louder too, just to...
Oh yeah, sure.
Sorry.
And I mean, another thing too is that, like, My Bloody Valentine is far from the only band that these guys are inspired by.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean, at least from listening to Alcest, it seems like they may be more influenced by other bands like Slowdive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how familiar with them you are. But...
I've never heard of Slowdive.
Okay, I mean, they're kind of the other shoegaze band in the early '90s besides NBV.
Yeah.
And they played way cleaner. They didn't use anywhere near as much noise and distortion.
That's what I love about
NBV did.
That's what I love about My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
Is just how much of, like, that, like, it's like, yeah, that kind of juxtaposition of Belinda Butcher's very dreamy vocals, and then just this really just this hard, dirty guitar. It's just
that very thick, like, Jesus and Mary chain influence there.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, and I think a lot of, like, the new gaze or new shoegaze, whatever the hell you want to call it, like those bands, I want to say they kind of lean more towards Slowdive, just because it would almost be a cliche now just to lean on My Bloody Valentine that much.
Well, it's interesting because one thing that I believe Belinda Butcher and Kevin Shields have both said, and, like, there's a very there's a story behind, like, the story behind Loveless is that everybody in the band was just at a really shitty point in their lives, and just, like, nothing was going right when they were recording the album. Everything was falling apart. Everything was going wrong. Everything just sucked in everybody's lives, and just, like, nothing was going right. And then just somehow that like, just came out in their music, and then they just basically one day just started listening to their to the album, and then they were just like, "Oh fuck, how do we do that?" It was, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think part of that is art through adversity.
Yeah.
You have four people collaborating on something like that.
Yeah.
But, like, all simultaneously hitting rock bottom.
Yeah, and
don't forget that they had, that was hell. I think it was pretty bad for them to record that. I mean, there was a lot of pushback from their label.
Yeah.
And I want to say that wound up being the most expensive album at its time.
Yeah.
To record, until they were, like, dethroned by Korn or somebody else, I think, a few years later.
Yeah, which is weird. Just, this indie shoegaze band that would, like, take that honor. But, like, yeah, it was such a weird story behind it, and that's what it was one of those weird things where it was just like, it was such a great album. And yet, but because of that, like, because of all of that, and basically because of the things that made it great, that because of that adversity, that they basically didn't make another album until, like, fucking
2013.
Yeah, 2013. This album came out in, like, 1991 or something like that.
Something like that.
91 or 92, somewhere around there. And so that's why there's so many people that have tried to kind of, like, get that sound, and they've tried to, like, get the same feel of that album, and, like, they just can't.
I mean,
because too much is going well in their lives.
Well, don't forget that, I mean, Kevin Shields is a very unique guitarist.
Yeah.
I gotta find this video again, but there was, I mean, just to dip back to Death Heaven a little bit, their primary guitarist was talking about a lot of Kevin Shields' technique and how he uses tremolo
Yeah.
and how he uses. I mean, you don't really get guitarists like that anymore who use their effects kind of as an extra instrument, if not, instead of like a supplement to their main instrument.
Yeah, it was interesting that how like there was one point there was like an early interview with him. I believe this was during when they were like promoting Loveless, that like he had said that he was really fascinated by rap music. And,
Okay.
And it was really interesting. He was talking about like how much he liked the way they use music, and I was like the vocals and how they mix together and so
Okay.
I forget the exact I really don't remember exactly what he had said about it, but it was an interesting thing to think about, considering that like rap is so much the complete opposite of shoegaze, where you have like the music very much in the background that's just in service of vocals and lyrics, and like rap is a very lyrical genre, whereas like with shoegaze,
Yeah, and it is a very vocalist centered.
Whereas like with like My Bloody Valentine, you can barely hear what Belinda Butcher is even saying.
And then you look at the lyric sheet and you're just like, that's what she's fucking singing? Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it was just interesting, and it would be like weird to kind of like think of really any shoegaze being a little bit more vocal centric. Like, it's just like, how would that even work?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, if you look at, like I said before, Jesus and Mary Chain, and then going on to My Bloody Valentine and Shoegaze, you just have that. You have kind of that logical. What's the word I'm looking for? The logical conclusion to the whole Phil Spector wall of sound thing.
Yeah.
And you just keep exaggerating it, and just keep pushing the wall of sound as far as you can go.
Mm-hmm. And so what is? I'm sorry. All right, once again, Deaf Heaven. The name of the album is
New Bermuda.
New Bermuda by Deaf Heaven.
I think it's just kind of strange. I don't expect black metal to trend on Facebook. I mean, I don't think I'm the only one who noticed this, but on Facebook's little sidebar there, they were hyping up the release of the album, and they did actually get streamed off of NPR, which I was not expecting at all.
I can imagine a lot of different black metal fans going like, "This is sellout bullshit."
Oh my God, Jesus Christ! Yeah, there's so much of that. There's so fucking much of that, and it's ridiculous. I mean, I like really primitive sounding lo-fi shit as much as the next guy, but black metal I consider one of those almost like chocolate and peanut butter kind of a thing, where it mixes well with other genres of music.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, you also have to think of imagine obviously I was not born at the time and you were very young.
Yeah.
But punk in the early '80s, you gotta think like they were getting away from the Sex Pistols and Ramones sound, and you had like more progressive bands like Husker Du and Perubu and like bands like that.
Yeah.
Even though Perubu and that was like in the '70s as well, but I have to imagine, like, I don't, once again, not being, I was born in '85, so
I'm 82. I was from 82.
Yeah, so it's but I can't imagine like Zen Arcade, which Zen Arcade by Husker Du, which came out in '84, like is like a classic, that's like a classic rock album. That's like a classic punk album, and it's considered like one of the best. But I can only imagine at the time there were probably a lot of punk purists out there that are like, what is this art house bullshit? And
yeah, I mean, there's a. At the time, I mean, when the Sex Pistols formed, they wanted to push it. They wanted to push it as close to unlistenable as they could.
Yeah, it was almost like because there was also the idea of no wave, like the Lydia Lunch and like that stuff, where they're just like, no, we're barely music, and
early industrial too.
Yeah,
I mean, Throbbing Gristle started because, hey, people actually like listening to punk music,
and
we should work against that grain.
Yeah, and yeah, so it's it would be interesting to have like because you have those all those react videos of like kids react or teens react or something like that, and like just have them listen to some of that like no wave or like all that stuff like that, and then
the one I remember they did was with Mertzbau.
Oh yeah, I actually haven't watched a react video in a while, so I don't.
The only reason I found that is because I was just perusing through Tumblr, and for some reason that wound up on my feed. I was like, all right, holy shit, I forgot Mertzbau exists, and it's just pure fucking white noise.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it's like a lot of it was more of a statement. It didn't matter. Like music didn't matter at all.
Right.
It was just a statement. It was almost like performance art, and shit like that is like you still get stuff like that, but it's very it's never gonna go main stuff like that. Like the Sex Pistols might seem listenable to now, but like back then they even said like whatever, fuck it, let's just be as awful as possible and put it in their faces.
And don't forget when they hired Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
And he he was so bad at playing bass that they just left his bass unplugged during shows. Not that he didn't try to get better, and he had his own. Yeah, that's another story, like fucking Sid Vicious, but
they made a story about him.
Well,
in which Gary Oldman.
Yeah,
so,
I've never seen that movie.
I've never seen Sid and Nancy either.
Yeah, I mean, I heard it was pretty good.
Yeah,
all things considered.
It's one of those like weird movies that kind of came out. I mean, that was like I want to say that was also like 83 or 84 or something like that. When that movie came out,
I think that was pretty early in Olden's career.
Yeah, and it was like not that it really wasn't that long after Sid Vicious had died.
Yeah,
like it was only like a few years after he had died.
Right.
So it was like but I mean, yeah, they waited many year after Ian Curtis died before making a movie about him.
Oh, really?
That's what I'm thinking. Like the Joy Division, that's Ian Curtis, right? That's his name?
Yes. Yeah, my memory is probably not that great right now.
I really like Joy Division, but for some reason I'm really bad at remembering those guys' names.
I mean, shit. I really like a lot of bands, but I have a lot of trouble remembering their names.
Oh yeah.
Hey, that guy who's the guitarist.
Yeah, totally. But like, yeah, there's a movie, Control. Yeah. It was all about him and he's struggling with I believe like he had like epilepsy, something like that. And that was like a few years ago. But anyway,
I forget Sid and Nancy. Was that a murder-suicide thing?
Yeah, okay, so I could be completely wrong, so I'm just spitballing here. To my understanding, it was that Nancy Spungen, something like that. I forgot. Like, yeah, Nancy died, and he was being investigated for her murder, but then he died before during the investigation.
Okay. Something
like that. And so they suspected that he murdered her, but I want to say, I actually don't remember the exact story behind it, but yeah, people had thought. So I want to say he lived, he outlived Nancy, but and
no, you have it right.
Okay.
I'm silently wikiing things.
Okay,
now.
so that was it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then, did he die of like a drug overdose or?
Yeah, he heroin overdose in his sleep.
All right.
So,
well then, and then Johnny Rotten continued on, and kind of faded away.
Yeah.
And then one of them started like Bow Wow Wow or something like that, or their manager or something like that did that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody.
Well, don't forget that they, the Sex Pistols basically started out to sell clothes.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
And they were kind of a manufactured band too, kind of like the Beatles.
Yeah.
So I mean that they were handpicked by a label originally.
Yeah, so they're not as like this anti-establishment as you might think.
Yeah, that was the image they were trying to sell.
Yeah, and I think there was the interview somewhere with somebody from somewhere. I totally forget. It was like a documentary about punk, where somebody was saying that like the Sex Pistols were actually really really intimidated by the Ramones, and they were actually afraid to meet them.
Fucking seriously?
Yeah, like they were just sort of like that because they imagined them being these like hard ass like American biker type guys. So they were like the story goes that they were actually afraid to meet the Ramones, and it turns out they were like the most laid back fucking dudes, like just like oh whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean they started the whole punk thing, but they were pretty chill fucking guys.
Yeah, that was that's the crazy thing about the Ramones is that they didn't have the punk attitude at all. Like they're like when they started making songs, they wanted to make like regular rock songs, but like it just turned out that they were just playing too fast.
Yeah,
like and it was just like it was just the way they played, and
they had a huge influence from like earlier garage acts, like the Kingsmen and other kind of proto punk bands too.
Yeah. So, but it's always interesting to go back and just look at the Ramones and how like kind of not punk they were.
Yeah.
Like it's just they would dress up like they were like a.
Well, I mean, I think that I think the whole punk image thing. Hell, I think there's a lot of genres of music that kind of rely on the whole image thing that really shouldn't have to.
Yeah, and it's really weird, and it's always been a thing, and I always kind of like point this out is the way image and music work in like Japan. It's like sometimes it's just insane.
Oh yeah, Visual K.
Visual K, which is like for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically that's like it's almost like that hair metal, but even more so. Like
just imagine if glam did not die in the United States and like Europe and stuff like that, and it just kept going on and mutating
and putting on more and more makeup, and the costumes got more and more elaborate. And it's just like it's insane to see some of these bands just how just insanely elaborate these costumes are, and how much makeup these people these dudes wear, and it's interesting. And you would think when you see a band like that, you imagine and for the most part this is true of hearing just some metal band and just and like something like that. But it's kind of interesting to hear that every once in a while you'll just hear what seems to be just a regular rock act of just like they just sound like. They just play regular hard rock music. There's no real like metal. There's no real hard like edge to it. It's just like like I guess like a Queens of the Stone Age type band or like just something like that. And then you see them and they're totally wearing the makeup and the costumes and stuff like that. I'm just like, did you really need all that? Like you sound like you sound like a garage band.
I think they are moving away from that.
Yeah.
I mean, just with more recent acts.
I haven't really listened to a lot of Japanese music in a while. Not because I didn't want to. I just kind of. I
don't know. Yeah. I've noticed that. What would you call it? Like post-hardcore or screamo or like dance punk or whatever has become more of a thing there kind of recently, and they look completely not Visual K.
Oh, okay.
At least from that particular scene.
Well, yeah, and that was one of the things where I was like, I would always look at like these indie bands, like the Pillows or Asian Kung Fu Generation, which is Japanese.
Oh yeah,
band.
shit, yeah.
And they were just and they were just look like normal dudes. I remember seeing them going like, oh, holy shit, that's Japanese like rock bands, and they just look like normal dudes. And
yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't follow Japanese rock at all like I used to, but I do think they're leaning more towards that kind of an image.
Yeah,
as far as that goes.
Yeah, it's been a while, but every once in a while there's like a Japanese marketplace not too far away from where I live, and they have like this like magazine section, and every once in a while I'll pass by and they'll still have like those magazines with all like that still exists over there.
Okay, so it's still big enough of a thing that they still have magazines devoted to it.
Yeah. Okay. So there's still like magazines devoted towards Visual K and that style. But like it's oddly enough, there's a lot of them are going more poppy. Because I've actually not too long ago I looked into some like the more popular people musicians that use that style, and it just kind of sounds like pop music with a little bit of rock in there. Like it's just a little bit more like lighter.
Well, hey, if it worked for Gact.
Yeah, Gact is definitely kind of like the...
I mean, he's Japan's Michael Jackson.
Yeah, pretty much.
For all intents and purposes.
Still pretty good. I still like his music. He's a weird dude. Like, he's much like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
He's a weird dude, and he has a weird, like, persona. that he has like in when he's in the public eye, and yeah, Gact, which is which I believe I want to say is just because I think his actual name is like Gakuto.
Yeah, that was it. But they decided to try to anglicize it.
Yeah, so it's just sort of
when he was in Malice Miser.
Yeah. Which was arguably like that's the band that started Visual K. So he's an older guy, and he's one of those the musicians where he's a lot older, but he's still trying to be like, no, I'm still way young and still hip with the kids. And
well, he has had plastic surgery too.
He has a major plastic surgery. Anyway.
But yeah. So, what the hell else was I listening to? I don't remember if I had mentioned this on the podcast before, but this was another.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Oh, sure.
Just seeing the levels here.
Yeah, because we have a. Oh, you know what? Because we're not on the same level as the microphone.
Oh, okay.
With this setup.
We're talking kind of down at there. So I apologize if this is a softer podcast.
We can fix it in post.
Or something like that, yeah.
We can fix it in post.
Okay. Forget I said anything.
But yeah, what was it? I mean, there's been a lot of like really good black metal this year, but I'm not really sure if I should dominate the podcast with me just talking about fucking black metal all the time. Drudk had a really good album this year.
And that's spelled weird. I want you to spell Drudk.
Drudk, it's Ukrainian. It's DRU DKH, which they're a Ukrainian band. They have a Sanskrit name, which means tree. A furrow cut short. That's probably. I mean, if nothing else comes out to top that and New Bermuda, I mean that's gonna easily tie with that. I think personally, because that's been my go-to commute music. I have a 45-minute commute that I hate, and that's a pretty great catharsis right there.
Yeah, I haven't listened to the entire album, but I was actually going to save this for later, like once I've actually listened to it, but I have been listening to Blur's latest album, which came out like a couple months ago.
Okay.
But Blur hasn't put out a new album for a while, like several years. Like I want to say,
yeah, they were on a pretty long hiatus from what I remember.
Yeah, and the songs that I have listened to are great. It's yeah, they still got it.
It's Blur.
It's Blur, and they did this in like going back to Japan. I believe I want to say they recorded some of their stuff in Japan, or if not the entire thing, and it has a little bit of an influence of like Japanese type music.
Okay.
But pop rock, that type of stuff. Like it's not like the Yoshida brothers.
I was about to say, like, did they collaborate with like Boris or some other band like that?
No. But it has like a little bit of like some of the music sounds like you can remix it and put it in Jet Set Radio.
Okay. All right, I could get behind that.
So like that.
So is it like, because I know Blur tended to shift their styles around like different periods, like which. I mean, does it sound like them going kind of backwards? Is it more
a little bit of
trying to do something new?
A little bit of like I'd say it's fairly new, but a little bit of Think Tank.
Okay.
Which I really like Think Tank.
I haven't listened to that in forever.
Yeah.
So
it's one with Crazy Beat.
Okay.
Was the hit off of that one. And it still kind of has that sound, and you can still tell that Damon Albarn has taken a lot from Gorillaz and has like he's really like
and then reincorporated that into Blur.
Yeah, and that was the deal with Think Tank. It was just sort of like it's basically like another Gorillaz album until the next Gorillaz album comes out. Because I think I want to say Think Tank came between Gorillaz and Demon Days even. I want to say
so that far back.
I want to say that was like 04. Like 03 or 04 or something like that. I could be wrong. It could have come out after Demon Days.
Thanks for making me feel old, asshole.
Yeah, well, yeah, the first Gorillaz album came out in like 01.
Yep.
And speaking of that, there's a new Gorillaz album in the works. They've announced that.
Is it coming out next year or like 2-3 years from now?
I have no idea. But yeah, it'll be the fourth Gorillaz album. And I hope they do a little bit more, like, because when the third album came out, it just kind of came out like unceremoniously. At least I felt, and I was like I felt like I was like one of 5 people that was excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to it. I didn't quite get into it as much as I did with Demon Days.
Yeah, it was like.
But I mean, that's kind of not fair.
Yeah, Demon Days is like a near perfect album. But
I mean that is. I mean, would you make the comparison that that's our generation's Abbey Road?
I wouldn't go that far.
You wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that.
I mean, shit. At least the cover art for Demon Days has been parodied and homaged enough times.
But I believe that's already a like the Demon Days like album cover is already like an homage to something else. To,
that's true.
I mean, to other stuff like Beatles and things like that.
That's
and,
true.
When like kind of Warhol-esque and
yeah.
But like I don't know, like of the last decade, like it's like to me, it's and this kind of just goes through my taste in music. Like of the last decade from like 2000 2009 of like what are the best albums of that decade. And like it goes like a bounce back and forth between Demon Days and Discovery by Daft Punk, and
that's pretty fair.
That's a really good. And like and when did Dear Science by TV on the Radio? That was like 2008, right? So that would count.
I would be the last guy to know that.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. I can't remember. Like yeah. It was like Dear Science was anywhere between like 2008 to 2010, and I'm like, oh, if it was 2010, then it wouldn't count because that's this decade. But I want to say it was like 2008, either 2008 or 2009. And then that's another like a fantastic album that's just like amazing like all the way through. Dear Science by TV on the Radio. But yeah,
that was 2008.
Oh wait, all right.
You were right.
So there you go. So yeah, if I were to make like a top 5, I already have like 3 out of the top 5. But I'd have to fill in the other 2, and I still wouldn't know which one would be number 1.
Okay. So you couldn't make the Sophie's choice and just pick one. And destroy the others.
Destroy the others. I mean, like for a while, I kept saying Discovery, and then and then I think someone brought up, it might have been you, that brought up Demon Days, and I'm like, oh god, I forgot about Demon Days. Oh my god, how did I forget about Demon Days? And then yeah, Dear Science is such an amazing album.
So. Yeah, I'm totally the token metal guy here, but that is one of my favorite albums of all time, Demon Days.
Yeah,
I could listen to that forever.
It's an amazing album, and like and I really like the first self-titled one and their third one, who's something I can't even remember the fucking name of the album. Something Beach. I think Beach, Plastic Beach.
Is that it?
Was that? I want to say it was 3 words.
God damn it!
I can't believe it. It's a good album. I feel bad, but
it's a good album. It's not as good as Demon Days.
No, yeah.
But I mean, like I said, that's a really unfair comparison.
It's a very unfair comparison, and like
I mean, to go back to the whole My Bloody Valentine thing, like
nothing can top Loveless. Seriously,
you think about some artists that stop because they kind of peaked and they're like, well, we can't fucking top this.
Yeah.
You have an album that killed the genre of music for like 10 fucking years.
It's like everyone else just put their hands up like, fuck, we can't. How did they even? All right, fine. If you want best album of the 90s, Loveless by Billy Valentine.
That's an easier
question
for you.
That's an easier question.
Right.
Hands down, Loveless. Fuck everything. I don't care about your Nirvanas and your Michael Jacksons and your whatevers.
And that's coming from somebody who's a pretty big Nirvana fan.
I love Nirvana, so and I think even Kurt Cobain was probably listening to Loveless and went, "Who the fuck? How did they even? How did they even?"
I just imagine like Butch Vig listening to that, just being like, "What the fuck did they do here?"
Yeah.
How many tracks does this have? Does it have 50 tracks or something like that? Fuck. He's building a drum tunnel with Dave Grohl, listening to Loveless. This is the headcanon I have for the recording of Nevermind here.
Man,
I should probably explain the drum tunnel, because anyone who's not familiar with
what is a drum tunnel,
the fucking drum tunnel.
I think you tried to explain it to me once, and then I fell asleep or something. I don't know.
I mean, basically, you just take a whole bunch of bass drums and connect them end to end, so you just have one really long bass drum.
Well, you have the drum centipede.
You have a drum centipede. Yes, you have a drum centipede, and that's how they got that very huge kick sound on Nevermind.
Mm-hmm. Really good. It's a great album.
Not something you could really do live, but
No, yeah, but there's another thing. Like, Garbage was such a great like '90s. Like, yeah, in the '90s, they had two great.
They came back.
They came back. They're good. I like their.
I still have to listen to it. I think it's been what, a good 9 months to a year since that came out. I haven't gotten around to listening to it yet because I've just been listening to mostly fucking metal in my spare time.
But yeah, it was interesting. Their album, or that they had that song. Was it "We're Not Your Kind of People," and like that album came out in like 2012. And
did it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like way off then, because I just thought of the well, shit, that trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5 probably came out in 2012.
2012 or 2013, something like that.
When they used that song.
When they used that song, and then it was just yeah. I'm trying to think, but I'm like, yeah, I want to say that album was like 2012.
Okay.
So they could be like they're.
So I do have more catching up to do.
They're actively like working. Like I've like on Facebook, like they're very active on Facebook and like on social media, and they talk about tours and they talk about when they're going back in the studio and they.
Yeah, she what's her name?
Shirley Manson.
I almost said Shirley Jackson. I was like, shit, that's not right at all.
That's the lottery.
Yeah, that's the lottery.
Anyway.
You mean I won the lottery? Shirley Jackson's the lottery.
Thank you for that Squidbillies reference.
Yeah, that's also hopping in the Wayback Machine right there.
From like 2008.
Yeah.
2007.
But shit. But yeah, she's pretty active on social media with the call-outs to fucking Kanye West.
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, I mean, she is a very like Shirley Manson is a very untethered, like she does not censor herself at all.
You mean unfettered?
Unfettered. Did I say untethered?
You said untethered.
All right, whatever.
I said untethered. You said untethered.
Unfettered.
None of us can fucking talk.
All right, let me reiterate.
All
right.
I'm not drinking before 2:00 here.
No, but like yeah, she and yeah, some people have actually like called her out because of the call out and said that like oh, you don't understand who Kanye is or something like that. And but like the fact of the matter is like she kind of does understand and she does get it, but I don't mean to put stereotypes into account, but she's Scottish. She doesn't fuck around. She's just like she sees bullshit. She calls out the bullshit, and so it's like she's a Scottish lady, and even though that she's in this American band and has been since 1995 for 20 years, it's just like yeah, you can tell when that kind of like attitude kind of comes out, that kind of train spotting attitude of like, no, fuck that, like or like I can't do a Scottish accent right now, but like so it's like
Oi! So wait, that's a completely different fucking accent altogether.
Yeah. But like, well, that's the thing. Like when people talk about, because like Kanye talks a lot about like race and race relations and things like that, and a lot of very serious social issues and things like that. So there are a lot of people that don't want to really call him out because of the fact that he does have a lot of really good points when it comes to stuff like that. But like Shirley Manson basically wasn't calling that out. She was just calling out like, okay, and she even says like, you have a really good point. You have a really good voice in this industry. Don't be a fucking asshole. Like she was basically her thing. It was like, that's not, you're not helping your points when you're a huge dick all the time.
And I wouldn't even say that that's a tone argument there. I mean, I don't think she's tone policing like that.
Yeah.
Just fucking rushing the stage in an award show. And,
yeah.
This is way off topic now too.
Yeah, but like, and that was the thing. Like even like when they even talk to people like Beyonce, and she never she's never really agreed with him doing stuff like that. And like even like somebody like Beck who would even like once Kanye said that he was like he was disrespecting Beyonce for not giving up the award and things like that, and Beck was still saying like, I still love Kanye, I think he's a great guy.
Yeah,
and
he's a little eccentric.
Yeah,
I mean, that's his thing.
Yeah, and because that's the thing, like I could definitely
I mean, I don't want to I really don't want to armchair diagnose people, but he is he is a very perfectionist sort of musician, and that does show up in his personality a lot.
Yeah, and like and it's that there's that interesting argument that like like, well, like basically, from what I gathered is that like it's and I do kind of see this in a lot of the music industry is that like will you know, a lot of this music of like, you know, R&B and rap and all that like gets super popular and make, you know, it sells it sells millions and millions of records and it sells, you know, so many millions of dollars and things like that. But at the same time, there's still so many people that see it as a novelty of like, you know, like, and that's, I think that was kind of what he
and
was,
you do get a lot of artists. I mean, like Beyonce, I think, who don't get the, you know, the necessarily the same amount of recognition that you know, so
it's almost
musicians
like,
in other genres that now sell less do.
Yeah, and it's yeah, because it's like you got to think like it almost feels like, you know, somebody's just like patting Beyonce on the, or like, you know, patting her on the head, going like, that was a good album, that's very good, and then like, but Taylor Swift, or, you know, like stuff like that. So
yeah.
like, and like that's who are really gonna, you know, so it's, you know, I definitely see like,
yeah, I'm gonna side with Beyonce over Taylor Swift on that one.
Oh, definitely. That was one where it's just sort of like, no, yeah, you know, I will side with
and
Kanye.
I'm not even a fucking pop fan.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just like and like someone had even brought up the fact that like you know, the whole thing with the Taylor Swift and Beyonce thing was like when he's just like, you know, like you know, like Beyonce made, you know, the best, you know, music video and, you know, and like one of the best ever made and stuff like that, and then like, you know, like Beyonce did end up winning like Video of the Year that year, but like it was just Taylor Swift that won Best Female, the Best Female award, the Best Lady award, or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
And somebody brought up the point where it's just like, the Beyonce video like had some like almost like fucking Scorsese-esque shots of like, you know, these incredibly like difficult dance moves, and like, and it was just sort of like, it was just actually
did they, I mean, I don't watch pop music videos, but did they pull off the oneer?
I don't.
That's what I think of when you say Scorsese.
I have not, like, I watched the video like once, like,
okay,
because, you know, like, I'm not a big, you know, pop fan or anything like that, but like I remember like looking at the video going like, this is actually like, for the fact that it's like, you know, for what it is, it's an impressive video. And then I forget who it was, but there were actually a bunch of people that had mentioned that's just like, you also have to think like the Taylor Swift video was just her like going like, aren't I just a country gal? Aww. And then like, you know, and then people just going like, aww. And then like, he's like, well, give it to her, give it to the sweet country gal or something like that. And then like, I kept thinking just sort of like, yeah, you got a point there. Like, it's Kanye has a point there.
And you do, I mean, at least looking at the Grammys, I don't have an I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of it at all, but there is kind of a trend where you just you tend to have like very black dominated musical genres, and you have a white artist coming into said genre, and it seems almost like it's not the Academy, right? They don't call it the Academy at the Grammys. Whoever the fuck is
the Grammys, I don't know.
Grammys.
I don't know anything about the
just
Grammys.
Like, holy shit, a fucking white person. All right, I know who to vote for now.
Yeah,
it almost feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, and you don't want to like, you know, shit all over people like you know, there's Adele and there's like, you know, Eminem and people like that. Yeah. You don't want to shit all over them because they do.
Oh, you can shit all over Eminem all you want.
Hey, but you know, they do good work. I don't like either of them, but it's like yeah, I don't like either of them, but you know, they you know, like they do all right work and stuff like that. But like I do see your point. So it's like you don't want to like, and that's the thing, and that's, you know, when, you know, Kanye had brought up the point about Beck and how like, oh, he should have given the award away and stuff like that. And I know Kanye has done that a lot, where he'll give his award away to somebody else and stuff like that. But I don't like, to me, that always just felt like that's almost like you're shitting over your all over your fans, saying like, I'm not good enough. You're listening to a loser.
Well,
I don't know.
I
don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it too much.
You know, I think there's a healthy amount of self-depreciation that you can have.
Yeah.
Because I think giving your own award away is one thing. You know, expecting
somebody else
to just like fucking give their, you know, I mean, I think he's kind of processing his own logic in his head. Like, you know, obviously, if I won the award, I would totally give it to Beyonce. Therefore, everybody else should give it to Beyonce.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. But like, yeah, but at the same time, like, I think that's a totally optional thing. You shouldn't be, you know, obligated to do that. But if you know, once again, you know, Kanye has done that like several times to other people.
Yeah, once again,
he's a weird dude. He's a very weird dude. That's another thing. Like I don't like his music either. I mean, if you've listened to anything we've talked about, that's not our kind of music.
I like chunks of his music.
I like the one song Power, the one where he samples from King Crimson.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good song. I'll admit it's a pretty good song. But and that's the thing. Like there's so many there's and Kanye would agree. There are so many different other really good acts out there that you shouldn't just point the spotlight at one person and go all right, here's the R&B rap artist that we're gonna fawn over next. It's I don't know, maybe you should take a look at the genre as a whole.
Yeah,
and just see that there are so many different a ton of different people in that genre that deserve accolades and not just the same three people over and over again. The two of them being white.
Yes.
But whatever.
But I mean that's nothing. I mean that's not unique to music. That's not unique to film.
Yeah, that's a lot of different things.
I mean, shit. You could have an entire series of podcasts about shit like this.
Yeah. Which we will not have that.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked. I've got to say, the one time that Erin's not here is the time where we don't talk about video games a whole bunch.
Right. That's how it's going to work out, right?
Yeah, it's But why don't we talk a little bit about? I know you haven't finished it yet, but you playing a little bit of Outlast.
Yeah. I'm not. As you can tell, I'm not terribly excited to talk about it, but.
This is an older game.
Yeah. It's not. It's from a couple years ago. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it an older game.
Well,
I got it off of PlayStation Plus, and I wound up buying the DLC because I heard the DLC, the Whistleblower, was way better than the base game.
Way more disturbing.
Yeah, way more. Just out and out disturbing. I mean,
but really well done. It's not it to me I didn't actually play it, but I watched other people play it on YouTube.
I haven't done either yet,
and
I'm just going off of word of mouth here.
And to me it felt like that they weren't trying to do these shocking things for shock value. It actually felt like they actually had something to say about things like this, about the things that are in Whistleblower. I'm not even gonna mention what's in it. But there are parts where I'm just sort of damn, there was a part I don't get and that's the thing, if the elements that were in Whistleblower were in a movie, I wouldn't be as shocked, but because they're in a game, there is really disturbing scenes in this game that I've never seen in a video game before. So that's just from what I have to say. So anyway,
I mean my experience playing Outlast, like I'd mentioned in a previous podcast, I just played through Soma, and I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was a little rough around the edges, and because I'm kind of playing them in a backwards order here. Outlast had come out way before Soma, and it feels kind of like there's a little bit of an influence from Outlast on Soma for one specific part that I didn't really enjoy. I mean, there's one section of Soma where you just have this giant hulking monster following you around, and you have to do basically busy work while you're being hunted. It's not like in Amnesia. I mean, their previous game where you would have the monster come around, and the monsters would actually leave the area. But they would kind of trick you with audio cues to make you think that you were still being stalked by something. Which I think is a really good way to maintain tension, but without frustrating the player, which kind of removes any horror from it. And yeah, the whole hide and seek game for that one section of Soma, like I said, you didn't really have to do that anywhere else in the game. You were kind of making it from point A to point B, and then you escape the monster, and then okay, I can do this next puzzle section. Or activity section, as Frictional wants to call it. But yet, in Outlast, that's a constant thing throughout the entire game. And they put very easy safe zones for the player to escape to just evade the monster, and you can kind of troll the Well, I really shouldn't call them monsters because they're still human.
Enemies.
They're enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, and in gameplay terms, I think of them as monsters because they just act like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you don't know the story behind Outlast already, it's kind of a cliche, like, old abandoned asylum thing. You're a journalist who wanders in with a camcorder, and it's paying homage to a whole bunch of found footage horror movies. But gameplay-wise and atmosphere-wise, I feel like it's really weak, and it's way more frustrating than it is scary. Actually, no, I don't think frustrating is the right word. I think it's more annoying than scary. I mean, at this point, I'm basically forcing myself to continue with the game.
Yeah, and it's I tried Outlast around the time that it came up for PlayStation Plus as one of the free games, which was about a year ago, something like that, like a little less than that.
A little less than that. I think it was only about like 6-7 months ago, maybe.
And it was, and I remember, like, just kind of like not being impressed by it. Like I talked about this before. Like it takes a lot to scare me in a video game, and like and this definitely, I was definitely like almost immediately like seeing the gameplay routine. You know, really seeing kind of like the nuts and bolts of the game.
Well, yeah,
at work.
They repeat it so often. They repeat it with every single encounter.
Yeah, and so it's like
hey, there's one guy chasing you. You have specific spots you can hide in, and the geometry of the areas that you're in, that you need to play hide and seek in, do not vary greatly enough to make it interesting.
Yeah.
And it feels like you just keep running into the same guy reskinned with the exact same eye the entire game, and I mean, if you look behind the scenes, that's probably what it's going to be. Yeah, and
it just, to me, like, it felt like even, and this is something that we were talking about beforehand, like, when you get startled, like, even when you get startled by, like, an actual monster, it's never, you know, it's always just like, oh, it's the monster. It's just like, and it's just like, oh, let's run to the safe zone. And like Tom was even playing a little bit of Outlast before this, and like yeah,
and
like,
I was several hours into the game. It's the exact same.
Yeah, and it was
as what he was going through near the very beginning.
Yeah,
and I mean when you can very easily play a game like that, like algorithmically on your first playthrough, something is kind of wrong.
Yeah.
Run into the area, you go find the next switch that you need to hit, and then you run back to the safe zone. And then you wait for the monster to go away and to go back to their patrol. You run out again, you hit the next switch, because it's always 2 switches before you can move on in every single section.
This seemed like this always just seemed like something that, like, and this is something I brought up, like, there's a part in Silent Hill 2 where you lose all your weapons and you have to go through one area with a bunch of enemies, and you just have to run past the enemy, and you basically just are, you know, you have no way to defend yourself, and you do have to I believe, it's been such a long time since I played Silent Hill 2, it's like one of my favorite games ever, but like I do believe you have to do a little bit of puzzle solving during that time. And and I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, this is really good, this is really tense, you know, this is, you know, like, and but then, like, before you get too tired of it, you get your weapons back, and, you know, it's back to the way the game, like, has been,
right?
And like, but it was good for like one section, but to keep,
I don't remember if that was Silent Hill 2 or if that was 3. It was one of them.
It was 2. Definitely had a, like, all right, so 2 definitely had a part where you
I mean, 2 had sections where you just had to fucking run from Pyramid Head.
With Pyramid Head, but there was one part where, like, you had to go into an elevator, but it was too heavy. You were too heavy, so you
right. Okay,
so you had to put all your stuff into a locker, and
it was like a dumbwaiter.
Oh yeah. So then
you
was
send
like,
it down.
Yeah, you lower it down, and so then you have to go down and get it. But I believe there might have been a part in Silent Hill 3 that was similar. But I, like, you know, my point is, like, if you can do something like that for like one section of a game, and it's like, you know, and like, if you don't overuse that, the idea of, like, you can't hurt them, you have to just run, you can't defend yourself, then, like, yeah, then it can be very tense. But like, if you do it over and over and over again, it's just like the seams just start to unravel, and you're just sort of like really, you're getting used to it. And it's like, and that's the thing about horror games of old, is that, like, it was always putting something new throwing something new at you, it was always like there was always some kind of a different angle that the horror was coming from, and there was always something new. You always had these different kind of puzzles. You always had to approach different things. Like the thing about Silent Hill or Resident Evil, it's like there are so many different parts to those games that like you have to approach it from several different angles, and there's going to be a certain point where you're like, okay, I need to get reacclimated to to the game here. I need to kind of like to really like understand what I need to do here, or else shit's gonna fucking kill me. But then with so many recent games, like with like Slender or Outlast or like games like that, it's just like it's one thing. It's one gameplay mechanic done over and over and over again.
Well, yeah, and you don't. I mean, the key there is pacing.
Yeah, and it's just like, and as much as we were saying that we enjoyed the Five Nights at Freddy's games, which are good games, they're cool games, but like the thing about those games is that
they're really short.
They're really short.
They're over before they outlast their welcome.
Yeah, and but even
if you see what I did there.
Yeah, outlast. Oh, it's an outlast. But even with that, like, and the one thing that Scott Cawthon got better at as he continued to make them, was that like with the first game, by night 5, you had the rhythm down of like when to close the doors, when to look at the cameras, when to do that.
Yeah, I mean those are very gamey games.
Yeah, but then like by Five Nights at Freddy's 4, he really tried to make it seem a little bit more random.
Yeah,
it had to you're like listening in for like the breathing and doing stuff like that. So he kind of like understood like how to keep the player tense throughout the game, and so kudos to him, because like once again it is basically 4 games with very similar mechanics, and one thing that I was telling Tom was that like if they ever made like a Five Nights at Freddy's, like Scott Cawthon decided to make like a different type style of game, which apparently like he is doing or something, or like is there a rumor?
I don't know. I mean that could have just been a stupid rumor that I heard. I don't know. I haven't been following it too closely.
Okay, but anyway, I thought it would be interesting to do kind of like an Outlast type game, but what where you are having to like stealthily dodge the animatronics, but then like instead of being a security guard, you're the closing shift guy, and you have to like go around and you have to like count down the registers in the pizza place, or like you have to like refill the crane game, or you have to like refill the cups in the soda fountain.
I think that would be pretty fucking great.
I thought and and then the entire time you're still having to like kind of do Outlast style, like try and like stealthily dodge the animatronics. You have to
and
hide
try not to hit overtime.
And try not to hit. Yeah, you have a time limit, so you can't hit overtime. So yeah, something like that would be kind of interesting. And that's actually when I first played Five Nights at Freddy's. That's what I thought. Like, oh, if he ever makes another game, it should totally be like this or something like that. But then he just kind of went in his style. But who knows? Maybe somebody will make like a fan game that's like that. But anyway.
But yeah, I'm kind of planning on going back and replaying the original Amnesia again. I don't think I ever got 100% in that game. I don't think I ever got all 3 endings. I think I just went straight for the best ending.
Yeah.
And I never really played the Penumbra games beyond the original freeware version of Penumbra.
I remember you playing that way back in like 2003,
and and that scared the shit out of me then.
I wasn't too scared because I was just watching you play.
Yeah.
So I was just sort of like, hey, look at that thing. You have to kill things using dynamite or some shit.
Yeah, I was trying to chuck dynamite at those weird little. Are they like little weird hopper things? It's been so long since I played that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. I'd be kind of. Because there's been this whole trend of the whole hide and seek kind of horror game.
I've never. Once again, like it's.
I'm kind of wondering if there's a time and a place now for people to go back to the original Resident Evil or the first few Silent Hill games.
I mean, like with The Evil Within and even like The Last of Us, like I had thought to myself, like I was not a big fan of either of those games, but I thought to myself, like it's really great that, especially with like The Last of Us getting so popular and like so big with people, that like this could be a return to the classics, or that style of horror game of it being a little bit more a little bit more variety, a little bit more emphasis on not jump scares and having multiple different mechanics at play instead of just one mechanic.
Well, yeah, and you do have
time.
the whole, you do have them emphasizing resource management too as a source of tension.
Oh yeah, and yeah,
which is a big thing in the original Resident Evil for me.
Oh, absolutely. And I really hope that with these people, with all these independent game developers who are making these smaller horror games, I think it's great that they the people are inspired by different there are a lot of people that are making these smaller games, but I would like to see maybe somebody a little bit more ambitious going all right, I want to make a horror game, but I'm not going to just take one game I'm going to take multiple game mechanics. I'm going to try and do a little bit more with the idea of horror and possibly because there's so many shitty indie horror people out there now. There's so many bad indie horror games.
There's a lot of Slender ripoffs and Amnesia ripoffs. Somebody just slaps together a whole bunch of pre-purchased assets in Unity. Not to say that Unity inherently sucks, but there's a lot of really shitty developers that use it.
Because just because it's so easy to use.
Yeah.
That it's because it's so easy to use that you do get those people that are just sort of I just want to make you get something like countless rooms of death, which was a I only know because GiantBomb.com did a quick look way back last year or something like that.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. That was shit.
Yeah, it was Dan Reichert and Drew Scanlon playing it, and they were hilarious, making fun of it. But it was terrible, and some people in the comments section had pointed out that people who had actually used Unity had just said this is filled with just the stock objects from Unity, just they're oh yeah, they're there's they go into a room and it's just a bunch of servers, and someone was just sort of that's just basically they just dragged it and dropped it. That's an example, a sample object in Unity or something.
Right, and the entire game was the same room, copy and pasted over and over again, just filled with different things.
Yeah, it was kind of weird to see, because Giant Bomb usually doesn't do quick looks of super low budget indie, they do a lot of indie game coverage, but usually the obviously slapped together type games they usually stay away from.
Yeah, that's more Jim Sterling's thing.
Yeah, but
that's his bread and butter.
But
at the moment, I think it's just really shitty Unity games.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm glad they did, because Dan Reichert and Drew Scanlon already they work off each other so well, and that was such a funny quick look. And it was one of my favorite parts is there was a loud noise, and Dan Reichert just goes, "Oh no!" And just and he does it just so sarcastically.
Well, shit, that's what I was doing when we were playing Outlast before.
Oh, yeah.
I ran into this room to hit a button, and then the big burly fucking dude is running after me. I'm like, well, time to run to the safe zone now.
Here we go.
Time to do this again.
Time to do the thing.
But
time to do the thing that you can do in Outlast.
But anyway,
shall we talk about real horror?
Yeah, why don't we use this as segue into the Nightmare here?
The Nightmare.
Yeah, the Nightmare is a documentary. I forget the name of the director, but he's the same director that did Room 237, which is another documentary currently on Netflix, which was about The Shining.
Yeah, and it was basically about
different death of the author type interpretations of the movie.
Yeah, it was very much people who it's very interesting to hear some people talk about it and kind of analyze the film in a very film student kind of way, and
right.
But there were a few that were weird conspiracy theorists and stuff like that. That would
the big thing with that, I actually just finally watched through the rest of the movie because me and Colin had watched that before together, and when they got into the whole moon landing conspiracy theory that Stanley Kubrick had faked the footage for the moon landing on one of his sound stages, that's when we kind of lost interest when we were watching it before. But after watching The Nightmare, I went back and I watched the rest of it, and it's kind of fun to listen to somebody's insane ramblings every once in a while.
But But yeah, but the thing about, and we'll get back to the Nightmare in just a second, but like
Yeah.
the thing about Stanley Kubrick is, I believe, I don't know if this is confirmed or if this was just a rumor or if he actually did admit to doing this, but like he did a lot of research about subliminal advertising, and
Yeah.
and he utilized some of those tactics in The Shining for like several different
Yeah,
shots.
I thought those sections of the movie were pretty interesting.
Yeah,
The section where I believe another critic was going over the various dreamlike just shots in the film, just where the movie follows dream logic, and it tries to turn the hotel into this kind of labyrinth. And you just follow you follow the way characters move around the hotel and stuff like that, and it doesn't make any logical sense with how the actual building itself is laid out.
but at the same time, that could also
And they're arguing that it goes past continuity errors.
right.
That was intentional to make it feel more dreamlike, to make it feel more like a to make the house the hotel itself feel more like a maze, just like the whole head section at the end.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see.
Which I think is an interesting interpretation of it.
Yeah, and the thing about things like that too is that it's interesting to kind of see. Not too long ago, James Rolfe and Mike Matei from Cinemassacre.com went to like the spot where the graveyard scene from Night of the Living Dead. This was like a few years ago, and they went to the graveyard, and they like these two guys are like Night of the Living Dead's like one of their favorite movies ever, so they know everything about it, and they were pointing out the way they actually like kind of figured out the way the shots were like the way the film was shot by like looking at certain and realizing that there are certain parts where if like you look one way you can tell where the camera was pointed, but then like if you look the complete opposite way, there's like it's basically like in like the actual like if you actually look at the scene and you actually look to like in the graveyard where it was shot, none of the shots make any sense whatsoever.
Right.
Like it's like,
dependent on you not being familiar with that graveyard.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was really interesting that like and like there are other directors who had mentioned I think it was like Rob Zombie had mentioned when they were shooting The Devil's Rejects that like the motel, the house, like and like the gas station, like all the scenes are like right next to each other. Like direct, like if you were to just point the camera at the house and then like like point the camera like slightly to the left, there's the motel, and it's all supposed to be like several miles away from each other.
Well, I mean he's huge on exploitation films, and that's like the exact same kind of shit that they pull in those kind of movies too.
And but like
for lack of a budget, I mean he's doing it because it's fun to him.
Yeah, but but like the point I think that the person in the documentary was trying to get at was that like it was more than just that. It was more than just like utilizing space and like pointing the camera at that was more done on purpose, that like they would have enough space to where they wouldn't have to do something like that, and so like you can that Kubrick did that on purpose for other reasons,
right?
Yeah.
For some other intent. Although I mean all these people with the exception of the moon landing guy are arguing, I mean, they're using death of the author, and there's, which is that you say that there's messages in some form of media, film, books, music, whatever, that goes beyond what the author intended.
Yeah.
And there's
whether they say it's
whether
there
they're
or not.
explicit about it or not.
Yeah.
And I could totally see Stanley Kubrick being one of those guys who's just totally having fun with that.
Yeah. Or like you almost kind of think like Kubrick might also just be like I'm gonna put a bunch of weird stuff that makes no sense just so people start discussing it.
Oh yeah, I mean like the shit with like the typewriter that Jack is using that changes color over the course of the movie, or
yeah,
the different stuff that they do with the wipes in there, where he just kind of creates different images by having very slow transitions between scenes.
It's just stuff like that could very well just be like red herrings. Like he might have just thrown in red herrings just to throw people off.
Yeah, and I mean one thing that you missed because we've stopped watching early is that they play the movie backwards, and they overlay it over the movie playing forwards. And that looks really cool. I would like to try that.
Interesting.
I mean, it could be one of those things like I mean, it's probably one of those things like with
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz and Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, where it syncs up.
Yeah.
If you start the record at a certain point.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's one of those coincidences that's kind of bound to happen when you do stuff like that.
Yeah, but at the same time, there are directors like Terry Gilliam in a lot of his films. The last scene of the film is just the first scene of the film.
Right.
Like it ends where it begins, and
right.
that's a lot of his movies. If you notice, even in little things even like Brazil, even though it doesn't necessarily basically it begins in the clouds and ends in the clouds.
Right.
So like that. But anyway, The Nightmare.
Yeah, because we got distracted by 237,
which is the other film that this director
is pretty known for. I mean, both of these are available on Netflix, but
okay. So The Nightmare. Let's get to that.
I mean, The Nightmare is a documentary that focuses on 8 different people. Mm-hmm. I believe there's 8 different people that they feature in this movie, who suffer from varying degrees of sleep paralysis. Which if you're not aware of what that is, I mean, it's an altered state of consciousness where you wake up you're waking up from sleep, and you know how your body will.
Here, I can kind of
if you want to, because you've experienced it before.
All right, so I actually here's the thing. Like I actually basically once or twice a month this actually happens to me. So I actually do I get sleep paralysis every once in a while. So watching this documentary was interesting because it was actually really interesting that a lot of the stuff that they talked about was shit that happened to me, and I was like, oh wow, that's and it, oddly specific stuff too. So basically, when you fall asleep and you start to dream, your body goes through paralysis, and that's basically think of it like if you're doing something in a dream, just to make sure your body isn't doing that in real life.
Yeah,
so that.
And when that itself doesn't happen, that's its own disorder. When people are acting out their dreams while they're sleeping.
Yeah. But there are some times when you will wake up and you'll kind of half wake up, and so it'll just be and your body doesn't snap out of that paralysis. Basically what's supposed to happen is that you just when you wake up, your body snaps out of the paralysis, and then you can move. There are sometimes you'll wake up and you won't be able to move. But on top of that, that's not the only thing, is that your mind also, that just means that your brain is to kind of explain it a little bit more in layman's terms, your brain doesn't know how to handle that. And so there's a feeling of fear and paranoia that you don't normally feel. It's a completely irrational feeling of dread and fear and paranoia. And so, I'm not I'm not a super fearful guy, when it happens to me, I'll wake up and immediately get this feeling that oh fuck, it's just something is really bad, something's really bad, and I need to get out of here, something's happening, and it can be terrifying, and on top of that, your brain is also can also process dreamlike images filtered in the real world. So you'll be waking up and you'll see your bedroom because you're technically awake, your eyes are open, you're seeing your bedroom, but there are dreamlike things that are kind of happening in the room at the same time. So with a lot of these things, sometimes it'll be different things, sometimes it'll be hallucinations, different dreams that are just kind of happening in your room. But a very common thing, and this has happened a lot, you'll see shadow people. Basically they just look like, as the film kind of describes too, as 3-dimensional shadows just walking around, and it'll be they'll be coming, and sometimes they'll be coming at you, and then sometimes, this hasn't happened to me, but this is common, one of them will be wearing a hat, and that'll be more of an authoritative, he's kind of the leader of the shadow people.
Yeah.
And he's that hasn't happened to me yet, but I have seen the shadow people, and at some point, and this is the most terrifying thing that happens, is that sometimes they'll reach out and they'll start touching you, and you'll feel it. You'll actually, I've actually had it to where they've started grabbing me and touching me, and I fucking feel it. I feel people grabbing at me. And usually that's when I snap out of it, because at that point I'm just freaked out so much that I'm just like yeah. But at the same time, like the last time that's happened, like, because I know it's sleep paralysis and because I know it's all fake, it doesn't freak me out anymore. And even when I get that feeling of fear, my brain just says, oh, it's just, like, you have that feeling of fear, but that's because like, my brain logically thinks like, okay, this is the sleep paralysis. All right, it'll pass, because it's happened so many times because it's happened before, which is something that not a lot of people can do. Like, that's, like, I think, like,
I think you're kind of rare to the extent that you've had that where it's almost like a lucid dream.
Yeah.
Almost.
Oh yeah, because like that's another thing that's happened to me, is that I've actually, because like in a lucid dream, that's basically when you're dreaming and you decide, you start to imagine things in your dream and they just kind of appear. You're just sort of like, well, now I want to have a pizza in my hand, and then, oh, there's a pizza in my hand, and like, that's I don't know, that's the best I can explain kind of what that is, when you're able to know you're in a dream, so you can affect the dream.
Well, I mean, I think the most common one that people do is like, okay, I know that I'm in a dream, I'm gonna fucking fly around because that's gonna be awesome, and then I just start flying around the dream.
Yeah, it's it's very rarely does that happen to me, but like there was at one point when I was in, basically it was like sleep paralysis, and I was curious, and I was just sort of like my brain, like, I actually knew that, like, all right, the sleep paralysis is happening, like, and then I was curious as to saying, like, like, cause can I control what I see? And so for some weird reason, because I was in such a fear state, I couldn't stop thinking about like horror movies and horror and scary shit. Like, that's all I could think about. And for some reason, I thought about the girl from The Ring. And out of the corner of my eye, and and this could have just been another shadow person or something like that, but the corner of my eye, I swear to God, there was the fucking girl from The Ring just in the corner of my room. Like, and it was just like, so once again, it might have just been like, corner of my eye, could have been like, it could have been something else, and it could have been
like, were you able to move? I forget how your room is laid out, but were you able to move your eyes towards the TV?
No.
This one,
no, it wasn't in the TV. She was just in the corner of the room.
Oh, okay.
And so I was just sort of like, and for some reason, like, I wasn't scared at all, because I was just sort of like, oh, did I do that? I was just like, is that was that me? And I was more fascinated, and the fear was gone, and it was weird how I imagined this terrifying, even, I mean, like, it might also been because I didn't think the movie The Ring was that scary. So maybe that was it. But I was just sort of like, was that me? Was I able to do that? And like, and since then, I was just like, yeah, once again, like, I don't know if that was just something I just saw at the corner of my eye, but like, I could have sworn that I was able to like say like, I'm going to think of the girl from The Ring. Hey, there's the girl from The Ring. Like, what? And so like, and then I was able to snap out of it. But like,
so when you like basically summoned her into your dream, like, did you still feel that sense of dread that normally comes with the sleep paralysis at that point?
No, that's the thing. Like, okay. I did beforehand, but then once that happened, it was gone.
Okay.
But at the same time, that's when I was starting to, because when that happens, I start to like move my extremities, like my fingers and my toes.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started to kind of snap out of it. So I was just, maybe that it could have been that I was starting to snap out of it. And then like once when you stop seeing like any of the hallucinations, it's a weird. I explained this to Tom. There was actually a point where I actually had like sleep paralysis, but then like I felt that I was able to get up, but I wasn't. I was still kind of dreaming. So I got out of my bed and I started walking towards my front door, and I was seeing like when you have a dream, like you're not in your house, you're somewhere else, or something like that. But I was just in my apartment, and I was walking towards the front door. Front door opened, fucking shadow people, and I was just like, oh, what? And I was just like, and then like what happened was kind of like when you have like video game lag, when you're like the game lags up, and then like you're running forward, and then like but then like all of a sudden it like snaps back to your original position once the game stops lagging. Is kind of what I explained it as. It's because it just felt like I was in the middle of the hallway walking towards the front door. Door opens, there's shadow people coming in, and then I was just like, what? And then immediately, like, it's almost like my apartment dissolved, and then like I started opening my eyes, and then like, or my eyes were like I don't know if my eyes were already open. Was the weird thing. It's just all of a sudden I was I was actually in my room and I was in my bed and I was like, huh, and it was so disorienting. So.
Yeah, and somebody related a very similar story to that in the movie.
Yeah, and so that's in the movie. And coincidentally enough, somebody was talking about a dream that had nothing to do with sleep paralysis, but he was just talking about a dream he had, and it was like in a location that I had dreamed about. And I was just sort of like, does that have something to do with it? And but he was just talking about a dream he had.
Yeah,
and it was like in some like old warehouse looking thing. And I was just sort of like, I've been in there in a dream before, but I think that might have just been a weird coincidence.
Well, I mean, I think there's some merit to the idea that, you know, people coming from a similar culture. I mean, he's an American. We're both an American.
Oh yeah.
You know, just thinking similar dream archetypes and stuff like that.
True, very true.
I mean
Yes.
the whole thing.
Absolutely.
The whole shadow people thing. I mean, that's cross cultural. I mean, that's
yeah. No, yeah.
I mean, that's been a thing that people have been experiencing for like thousands of fucking years, if not, you know, since we've been a species. So.
Yeah, and then yeah, at some point there, one of the people did feel that those were like, you know, it's a religious thing or something like that, and she actually felt that they were like demons or something like that. And then
well, yeah, there were two interviewees who thought that they were being visited by demons and ghosts and shit like that.
Yeah, but
I mean, I think it was very interesting, like where you see.
But I mean, the thing about it is that, like, you know, with every culture has shadows.
Yeah,
is the thing, and like,
oh yeah,
and that's the thing. Like in every culture, that's what's, you know, mysterious, and that is the idea of, like, you know,
ambiguity.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, the idea of like having a shadow, and the idea that you always have the shadow with you, you know, technically, and it's like, so it's like I could see that, like, that is very ambiguous. That's a very, like, you know, I could see that being like a thing for everyone, of just sort of like the idea of your shadow is kind of a mysterious, enigmatic thing. You know, and then like the thing about like the hat, you know, here's the thing, and this is gonna sound kind of weird, but like when somebody's an authority figure, something has authority over you, 9 times out of 10 they're wearing a hat. Like I don't know, like when you think of, like, you know, like a police officer, or like, you know, like something like that, like you think of, like,
I think that's an interesting point to make.
Yeah, just sort of like, you know, like when you have like, oh, what like, you know, like, oh, here's the shadow people, and here's the leader of the shadow people, he's wearing a hat, you know, like, I don't know, like that seems like that would be something that you would think of,
right?
And yeah, but yeah, it was definitely kind of weird to see that the people had this, and like the thing that kind of freaked me out a little bit was like there were people that had much more severe problem, and I was just sort of like, I really hope that doesn't happen to me, but you know, thus far that it has not.
I mean, yeah, I mean, yours is pretty
basic.
I mean, I almost would want to say standard,
yeah.
And for
like
somebody's experience with that,
yeah, and if ever happens to, yeah, once again, like anytime it happens, yeah, my brain is just sort of like able to say, like, oh, this is, you know, you just gotta, you know, snap out of it, like, you know, it's just like it'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting where you can see, like, you could kind of tie down a lot of these different aspects of culture, because a lot of these are pretty well represented in the people that they showed in this documentary. Like there's this one there's one of the interviewees who had been attacked by entities in his paralysis that are not that far off from gray aliens.
Yeah.
And I mean, and he was like fucking 1 or 2 years old when this started.
He was in a crib.
Yeah, he was in a crib, and
so
I mean, you could see where this shit gets started.
Yeah, you can definitely see, like, the idea that like after, especially after seeing something like that, and to see like that somebody who probably, you know, like he was like, yeah, he was in a crib, he was so young, you know, that somebody that young hasn't been exposed to the idea of aliens and like alien abductions and things like that. So like you got to think of like this is where alien abductions happen. This is, you know, like, this is, you know, and then you can explain so many different things with like alien abductions or like the paranormal, stuff like that.
Well, I mean,
with sleep paralysis,
one of them basically had what's pretty close to the classic incubus.
Yeah.
Like demonic visitation sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the closest person the movie has to a main character, like he has this really fucked up shit happen to him there's like this horrible like metal apparatus attacking his dick.
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting how like you can feel shit as like because your brain.
Yeah, I mean you described like the whole touch sensation.
Yeah,
but you've never actually experienced pain.
I've never experienced pain.
But
I have had it where I swear I could feel something touching me, and I think it's because it's like because your brain is in and out of like consciousness, like you kind of like you expect you have that expectation of like if somebody reaches out to touch you, you know what that feels like, you know what that's gonna feel like.
Your brain is kind of filling in the gaps.
Yeah, and it's especially when you're in like when you're kind of half in consciousness, half out of consciousness, like it's almost like the part of your brain that's thinking that is coming out of the half that's conscious, like and it's like like for the most part, like a lot of like almost all of these are explained very like despite the fact that there are a couple people that they interview that they feel that that it was paranormal, it was like the supernatural thing. For the most part, the director doesn't the director does not say yes or no to that, but at the same time you can tell like most of the other people
he's the skeptical one.
Yeah, like
when he asks one of them like, so you don't believe in the Wikipedia definition of what sleep paralysis is.
Yeah, and like
he's kind of trying to phrase it kind of gently there.
Yeah, of just like you're like, and that's the thing that you also have to realize when like like why is it always freaky shit that happens during sleep paralysis? And it's like it's almost like that. There's that classic idea that your brain always goes to these darker places, and like there's the classic psychological,
the very base fight or flight response.
Yeah, or just even that like that thought of like memento mori of like deep down everyone wants to die, or like that.
Memento mori means remember that you will die,
or remember that you will die, or like deep down.
That was
like,
Persona 3.
That was
what you're thinking of.
Or okay, whatever. Yeah, I'm also that's also the name of the short story that Memento is based off of.
Right.
But like I'm getting all different kinds of works of media mixed up, but like the point I'm trying to get at was just like your brain goes to these like darker places, and like it sometimes you can't do anything about it, like you just start thinking about like fucked up shit. And because like the idea of interestingly enough, like the idea of hope and the idea of like just very very positive thinking is sometimes caused by a chemical imbalance in your brain that like like it is.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're all big bags of hormones and neurotransmitters, and
yeah, so it's like it's like almost natural that like when you face the unknown and you face the idea, like it's not crazy to think that like you're gonna get you're gonna start thinking about fucked up shit when you are in a state like sleep paralysis or something like that. Like it would be weird to me if all of a sudden you were just like, oh, this is awesome that I can't fucking move, and like it's you're gonna have that thought of, especially when you're in half conscious and half unconscious, like you're gonna be like, what's going on, what's happening? It's like that fear of the unknown.
Oh, what's kind of fucked up and freaky to me is that, I mean, I've watched this a grand total of like 3 times now. I watched it once by myself. I watched it once with you and your dad.
Yeah.
And I watched it once with my boyfriend.
Uh-huh.
And it took 3 viewings of the movie to kind of jog my memory to realize that I experienced this as a kid.
Really?
Because there are memories I have that I just can't explain any other fucking way now.
Uh-huh.
Like, I think I was like 5 years old. My grandfather had just passed away from lung cancer, which was kind of a horrible... one of the worst things to see and to experience as like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in the 80s, like medical technology was not where it is now.
Mm-hmm.
With cancer treatments. I mean, my grandfather basically slowly turned into a skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
Right in front of me. And yeah, I told Jesse about this, but it was, I remember being in my house, and my grandfather just passed away, and there are these two guys in suits wearing sunglasses who barged in and just kind of carted him away. They were paramedics. They black suits, black sunglasses. Like what other people would describe as like a fucking Men in Black experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was such a vivid memory. I was swearing for fucking years that that's what had happened. But there's no other way I could explain that other than like fucking sleep paralysis.
Weird.
Yeah. There's this other one where I was just visited by this woman in wearing like this big white fucking toga. There was this like light behind her or something like that, and that was totally the opposite. That was not like a malevolent presence at all.
Which is I mean, there have, and even in the film they talk about that there are.
There's this one woman who was visited by her dead mother.
Yeah, and even though she swears that it actually was her dead mother's visiting, once again you can kind of tell the director didn't say anything, but it just kind of like it was just part of the sleep paralysis.
But yeah, like these are memories that I had held on to for a very long time, and then I just kind of forgot. Up until after I'd watched this movie a couple of times, I was just like, man, have I ever experienced this before? This seems like something I would have experienced before sometime in my life.
Yeah. And
that's the only way I could explain that.
I remember one time I was sleeping over at your house, and like I was like sleeping in your living room, like on the couch or something like that. And then like you came downstairs and like something like that, and you had said that like you had like the feeling that people are like watching you or something like that. But so I don't know if you had sleep paralysis or if that was just like just a weird, because every once in a while like you know.
I sleepwalked as a kid.
Yeah. I
don't know if. Because we first met in high school. I have no idea if that was me sleepwalking or not, because I don't remember that at all.
No, you were awake and so like that.
Was I?
It was me and I believe our friend Pat or something like that, and then and you just said you couldn't sleep because it felt like you just said like you felt like you were being watched or something like that.
Okay.
And like no, because then we actually sat up and like we're like watching TV and stuff like that. So it's like this was like 2000, 2001.
Yeah, I don't fucking remember this at all. I must have been really fucking out of it,
or something like that. I don't know. Like, I mean, it might have been like it might have just been like an off thing of just like, oh, I can't sleep. I was like, I feel like people are watching me or something like that, or it might have just been like an off comment or something.
Okay.
So I don't know. Like, it might not have even been like that big a deal.
Yeah.
But I remember, for some reason, I remembered that just because like I thought it was weird. But yeah, I don't know. Sleep paralysis is terrifying, especially if you don't know what's going on, and you can kind of see, especially in this documentary, of like how many paranormal experiences and how many experiences with like alien abduction and things like that can be explained with sleep paralysis.
Also, like some like traditions and/or superstitions and stuff like that, like with that one guy who had it the worst and experienced it every single fucking day of his life since he was a kid.
Yeah.
He was trying to ward off the sleep paralysis by putting TVs in his room, because he noticed that if he left the TV on, the paralysis would be less likely to happen.
Yeah.
And that eventually ended up with him like collecting like 10 or 12 TVs in his bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see how that kind of thinking could extend out to like, oh, I'm gonna like leave a fucking clove of garlic by my bed to ward off vampires.
Yeah, totally.
And this was, I don't know how familiar you are with like psychology, like the history of psychology and whatnot, but Skinner, the guy who created the Skinner box and the whole ringing the bell and making dogs salivate by associating that's Pavlov.
That's Pavlov.
Skinner did the Skinner box,
yes.
Where you push a button, you have a rat or another animal pushing a button, and they get a food pellet.
Yeah.
And they immediately associate the act with the reward. So they'll even be pushing the button even when they don't get a reward from that.
Mm-hmm.
What he also did was he would take a pigeon and he would put the pigeon in a box.
Mm-hmm.
And there'd be nothing for the pigeon to interact with that would cause the food pellet to come down, right? But every once in a while, the researcher would push a button, and a food pellet would drop into the cage.
Mm-hmm.
And the pigeon would be like, all right, what do I do to cause that? And eventually, you would do this enough times at random intervals, and the pigeon would start doing like a weird fucking dance to try to get the food pellet to come out.
Oh, because it thought that it was.
It would
the
draw
way
draw a correlation between what it was doing and this event that it had no control over.
Huh. That's interesting.
So yeah, that was a very, very enlightening experiment back in the day. People don't talk about that as much as the Skinner box.
Right, yeah, the Skinner box you hear about all the time.
Because the Skinner box is very applicable to advertising and shit to video games and gambling.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff like that. But the dancing pigeon experiment does not get talked about as much.
I mean, and that is, once again, that could be relegated to like there are several video games that we've tried with that had like no instructions, or just sort of like, oh, I caused something. Oh, how did I do that? What did I do? How did I do it?
Trying to get to the ending of PT.
PT, yeah, of like, he's like, what did I do? What? Oh, I think I walked like 6 times this way, and then like that, So yeah, I can.
And then somebody finally figured out a way to
to
guarantee the ending of that game.
Yeah, with like saying like a name in the
you have to like speak into the microphone, right?
Yeah, something like that. But I think somebody has finished it without doing that. So there might be a different way to do it.
Yeah, there have been a lot of people who've done that.
That's a completely different subject. Maybe for another time.
But right now, yeah, the Nightmare. I would say that was a pretty excellent documentary.
It's a pretty good movie. It's an effective horror film.
Yeah,
because like I think one thing that like, even though like I've had this before, and I like anytime it happens, I know that it's happening, and I'm able to kind of go like, oh, okay, I know it's happening, so I know not to freak out or anything like that. But it still was freaking like, well, what if one of these more severe cases happens or something like that, and like what if like but it hasn't, and I think it has a lot to do with your type of like your personality. I think it has a lot to. There are other things happening behind.
Well, and your life experience and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of the more extreme sufferers in the film had said like, well, she came from an abusive household.
Yeah, so there's
where she was fucking beaten every day, and
so
it's no surprise that she's gonna have something this severe.
Yeah, so like I think it might have been, because that hasn't happened for a while. I don't want to jinx it, but like a lot of people had said like a lot of it had to do with stress, and like I think like there are times when I get really stressed out, and lately I've been pretty chill, pretty zen about that kind of stuff. So it's been so I actually can't remember the last time it has happened, but it might have been like during a time when I'm like getting just really stressed out, and stuff like that. So who knows, that might have something to do with it.
But yeah, like they kind of showed in the film, like if you're trying to avoid sleeping, it's going to make it much more likely that you're going to have an attack like that.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to avoid sleep, or if you're trying to wait until exhaustion to go to sleep, that's going to put your body under even more stress, and you're going to be that much more susceptible to it.
Which is weird, because a lot of times I do I don't wait until exhaustion on purpose, but let's just say there's a little thing called YouTube that that I will watch at like great length and realize, oh fuck, it's super late, and that's when I'll realize, oh, I'm super tired. Then I'll be like, and so stuff like that will happen. But then
do something stimulating, like play a video game, and then you realize like, oh shit, I should not be awake right now.
But and the also thing, the thing about me too is that, like, I think I've mentioned this before, I have a graveyard shift. I work a graveyard shift, so like I sleep during the day. So like I'd imagine shit like that's I don't know.
I know you've got like blackout curtains and everything like that, but they're never 100% effective.
No, I don't have those.
Oh, you don't even have those? Okay.
No, because the association told me to take those down.
Wow.
Because they're weird. They're like, no, because they were like a different color than what they want, because they want all of their apartments to look uniform from the outside.
Well, that's kind of bullshit.
It's stupid, but like, so yeah, so it's like super bright. So I've learned to just sleep with it being bright out. And it doesn't, and I'm able to do it. It's fall asleep. And so it hasn't been that big a deal, but like I imagine I don't know, seeing crazy shadow people during the day. Like, I don't know, like, I don't even know how that would work. Like, I don't even know, like...
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, none of the people in the film... I mean, not to say that nobody else has experienced this. Like, none of them worked third shift.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know... Like, yeah, like, but then again, when I wake up, it's nighttime, so something might happen or something like that.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I don't know. It hasn't really happened that often ever since I swapped my night and days.
Really?
Like, I've noticed that. Like now that I think about it,
so when you start working at your current job, that's when it stopped.
That's kind of when it stopped, and it's just like, yeah, I actually cannot think of a time when I had sleep paralysis and it was daylight. So that's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, weird.
But yeah, I mean, it's
now,
a very
now
good
that
movie.
now that I say that, now it's gonna totally fucking happen.
Well, that's what they talk about the fucking movie, where he was kind of treating it as like a brain plague, or a viral idea.
But it's interesting. Like that's never happened to me. Oddly enough, I realize that anytime I have like a weird nightmare or a weird dream or something like that, like I never think about anything freaky beforehand. It always just like it always just happens out of nowhere. And anytime I like see
that's what happens with me.
Yeah, anytime I see like a fucking scary movie or I think about scary shit before bed, like I never have a nightmare. It's like it's almost like my brain getting it out of the way before going to bed.
Right, it's like a catharsis.
Yeah.
Where
so
you're...
So yeah. So who knows?
But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, people still don't understand fully how fucking dreams work. Is it a byproduct of you processing things that you've learned today, or experiences that you made? Is that you creating long-term memories out of your day, or is that an intended effect?
Yeah,
the dream itself.
There's so many weird things, because like there's so many different like symbolic dreams that most people will have too. Of like, like, oh, when you dream about this, that means this. It's just sort of like, so anytime anybody dreams about this, that's what that means. Like,
I mean, that I don't. That's a very like Freudian. That's like it's a very proto psychology way of looking at it.
Yeah, because there was always that thought of like when like, because there was the idea of like, your teeth are falling out, and then some people say that's a sign of being suicidal or something like that, or like, but then like, number one,
I can tell you I've never had that dream.
No, yeah, and it's like but it's like, the weird thing about it is that that's actually a common dream to have.
Yeah.
I've never had a dream like that either, but like there are a lot of people that say that they have like a dream about like teeth falling out.
I mean, shit, dude, I'm fucking bipolar. I've never had that dream before in my life.
Yeah, and
I've had the falling down the mine shaft dream.
Yeah, but
it was literally a mine shaft in a dream.
And what was interesting, I actually saw. I was actually talking about this last week. I was talking about the movie Inside Out.
Yeah.
And like the main character has a weird dream, and they try to throw, because they try to like throw like everything at like the character or something like that. And one of the things was just like oh, your teeth are falling out, and just you just see like these teeth falling out and stuff like that. And it was because that's like a common like nightmarish type of dream to have, and but then like there's that thought of like, what if you're just afraid to go to the dentist? Like, what if that's like you have a dentist appointment, you're like, oh no, I like what so
yeah, I mean,
so there's always that thought of it too, of just like,
sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Yeah,
it's not a big bag of dicks.
Sometimes a space vagina is just.
Sometimes you really don't want a dick in your eye.
That's right. Maybe this is the longest podcast we've had so far.
This is the longest one, and it's just the two of us. Shit.
Yeah.
And we've gone over music,
video games.
We've
film.
We're two white guys talking about like race with regard to.
This is the second time that's happened too. Like we're not trying to get all crazy and political and shit. But yeah. All right, I think we're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah, we should totally.
This is the longest episode we've had. And all right.
Yes.
So
yeah, Erin will be back next time. I'm pretty sure all three of us will be there next time, barring something terrible. I may saw off my own leg.
Yeah,
that could happen.
The Nightmare and Room 237.
Yes,
I believe those are both on Netflix. Both recommended. I'll say The Nightmare it's freaky. It's a freaky movie. So like just know that. Room 237, it's just basically it's all about the movie The Shining. So like both of them are kind of have horror themes. But like the Nightmare might be a more effective horror movie than most fictional horror movies. Let's just say.
And that's with them, going out of their way to break the fourth wall and show the shadow people walking between sets and stuff like that.
Yeah. So even with that, there's still the thought of like this could happen.
And this has been a very spoilerific, discussion of the movie, but
it's a documentary.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think spoilers would take away from the.
Absolutely. Like you I mean, really, to get as much out of it as we did, like you really just have to sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, this is Tom and Colin signing off.
All right, boy.
Goodbye.
You got to click the button.
I'm gonna click the button. Click the button.